All right, everybody, welcome back to the Stronger You Project, episode number 7. I got a really good friend of mine. He's got a pretty incredible story. His name is Aaron Volpatti. He's an author, cognitive performance and injury coach. He's a speaker, retired NHL player, burn survivor, and graduate from Brown University, B.Sc. Human Biology. He's a pioneer in cinematic visualization and athletic performance. Aaron's unique practice has helped athletes all over the world. Born and raised in Revelstoke, British Columbia, he is a guitar aficionado and wannabe rock star. He's a professional dabbler, spending his free time fishing, hunting, camping, golfing, playing squash, or learning a new musical instrument or language. Aaron resides in the beautiful Okanagan in British Columbia with his wife Michelle and his sons Finn and Soren. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Justin. Wow, what an intro, man. Uh, Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you. I've actually read your book, and by read, I mean I read a lot of Audible books.
I
When
like
I
that.
when
I've
I
never heard, I
find,
don't know if I've heard someone say read the Audible, but I think it sounds better.
yeah, I read a lot of Audible books. I
Yeah, yeah.
I really like listening to the person's voice of who reads it. I just got
Mm.
done reading Jordan Tutu's Audible, I guess, and it's just good to hear the person read it. And you're pretty good at putting emphasis in your book, and it was really good to hear. Um,
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, that was an interesting project, that one, the audiobook. Have you done an audiobook for yours?
No, not yet, but
Did,
that's definitely coming up.
I gave you the contact for that, I think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, he was
absolutely.
he was good. Um, Interesting experience. You forget how much you fuck up reading aloud. So I think you know what actually enjoyed it. Um, so by interesting, I don't mean bad by any means. It was just you're like it's a fine line between you don't want to be monotone,
Mhm.
obviously, and like you're almost acting in a way, but you don't want to be like over the top. And I don't know, I've listened to Will Smith and Matthew McConaughey's books, like they're the best out there in terms of
Yeah.
like entertainment with how their voice is, but like I'm not them. Um, and if I try to be, it's gonna be weird. But you do have to like have some balance of that acting in there. So
Yeah.
uh yeah, it was a fun experience.
So when you found yourself in the booth, were you doing hand movements in there by yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's as a speaker too, like which we both are, uh it just helps with your voice, all the body language stuff, right? So yeah, totally. You almost just pretend that the guy's not there, or you could whatever if that doesn't bother you, and then just go as you would in a keynote or however else you get again some entertainment value a little bit, right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, so you have a book. You played in the NHL. You're a burn survivor, and you're a graduate from Brown University. So I personally know that you have one heck of a story, and I'm very grateful that you wrote it because there's a part in there that really I resonated with, and it was because of that book I was able to get a little bit of closure in my life because I was able to reach out to you. But how did it come? How did Aaron Volpatti become an NHL player, an author, a burn survivor?
Yeah, good question. Um, so for me, like on paper, I've had the shittiest luck of any, or of a lot of humans, maybe. Now, I don't become any of those things without any of the quote unquote bad luck, right? Because so for me, like every piece of success I've had, whether it be, forget about the NHL even. Like I never even thought about pro hockey till 24, as you know from reading the book. Uh like just even going to Brown. Uh and then obviously the NHL, but life after hockey for me was such a dark time and a real struggle. Uh, that's why I'm really passionate about what I do, because I'm not here where I am today as an author and a speaker and a coach, and even just like the family I have today. Like none of that shit happens without the hard times and the adversity, or the quote unquote bad luck. So in a nutshell, that's how I'm here, is because of, finding my way through the murky shit, and coming out stronger, and not realizing it at the time,
Mhm.
right? That it was going to lead somewhere even better, right? So yeah, really in a nutshell, I'm here because of those hard times.
Yeah, and oh yeah, yeah, you did go through some of those hard times. Could you walk us through kind of maybe your early childhood, kind of coming up into becoming the person that you were on the Vernon Vipers and the BCHL, to how you went to Brown and finally made the show and got into those double homicides?
Yeah, all right, well, buckle up. I don't know how much time we got. We can go into the burn stuff as much as you want.
Okay, yeah.
But I mean, early childhood. So for me, that was not, I guess, a huge part of why I wrote the book, but a small part of it was because I'm not, I'm not Theo Fleury and Jordan Tutu and these guys that have, bigger names with longer careers and all that. I think the major difference for me is that I never had any like childhood trauma or adversity really early on in my life. Like my life was smooth sailing, man. I had a great childhood, right? But so all that stuff came later for me in life. Um, but yeah, I grew up in Revelstoke, as you know, and yeah, our family grew up in a little trailer, in a little trailer court, and I don't know, I just have nothing but good memories. We played outside all the time. I had run-ins with bullies for a couple years there, like between the ages of, I'd say, 10 and 13. So, and my parents were like very hardworking, middle class. By no means was my dad hard at all on us, but there was no fucking around, like, in terms of, you better work. All I want care is if you work hard. You better work harder than anyone else. And that was really it. Other than that, we had fun. Not that that couldn't be fun either, right?
Mhm.
And so I think, like, going into all my adversity, like, sure, I think I maybe had some level of predisposed grit there that, you know, maybe someone else might not have. Like I remember that finally with the bully, as you know, and with the story, my first encounter, like, this guy just wouldn't leave me alone. And I was a tiny, tiny, tiny kid. Like, I don't think I hit puberty till 16. Like, just
Me too.
smallest kid in Revelstoke, right? And I wasn't like, I was a good kid. To the thought about throwing a punch, like, never really crossed my mind. Uh, I did well, I mean, we did box. My dad ran the boxing club, which I enjoyed, but it wasn't ever like, hey, this might have a spillover in my life. I was a young kid. And I remember my dad said, finally, after I came home crying one day, and he's like, you've done the right things. You've come to us. You've talked to the school. We've talked to their parents. Nothing's changing. He's like, at some point you have to fight back, because I mean, times were obviously different then too,
Mhm.
right? Especially in little old Revelstoke, and maybe even Salmon Arm. I'm sure it was not much different there, but uh, and I was like, well, what do you want me to do? He's like, well, what do you think that means? Like, you gotta turn around and you punch him as hard as you can right in the nose. And I'm 10 or 11. I'm terrified. I'm like, you want me to hit him? He's like, yeah, because he's not gonna stop if you don't. You have to fight back. And it wasn't. I look back now, and it's not. And I think it taught me a good lesson in, I mean, intimidation maybe and all that other stuff, but more, you got to fight for what you believe in, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't realize that at the time. I remember asking him, like, well, what if he fights back? And I just remember my dad said he won't. And that always stuck to me, like, how does he know that? You know?
Mhm.
And sure enough, the next day, this kid was just on me, and I turned around and I clocked him right in the nose, and of course, he never bothered me again. um,
It's the
so
dad instincts.
yeah, right. And I don't know, times are different now, obviously, but it taught me a lot. Like I said, but yeah, other than that type of adversity, like again, my childhood was like textbook, great, really supportive family. Like we were all super, super close as a family. And then, yeah, I went to Vernon at 18 for the Vipers, and yeah, like snuck my way into that league as a fighter. So all that, not really. I mean, the bullying that was like a couple episodes, but like the boxing helped me in fighting, and that I wouldn't say that like made me become a fighter. Again, like I wasn't that good. So that's the only way I made it into junior A, especially with the Vipers. They were like number one in Canada when I was playing there for a couple years. So to crack that team, I wasn't going to do it in the top nine, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and in Revelstoke, like, yeah, when I say I wasn't that good, I was still good. Like I was above average. But when you're talking about junior hockey, it wasn't that. I played again on the fourth line, scored one goal my first year there, had a lot of fights. But that's who I was. Like, so, and even growing up in Revelstoke, because every kid has the NHL dream, right? At
Mhm.
some point. I shouldn't say every kid, sorry, every kid that plays hockey, like that's generally the dream when you're 8 to whatever, 13, maybe 18. For me, it was around 13, 14, again, like, did I want to do that? Sure. But at the time, I didn't want to seem like naive because like I played house hockey one year and I got cut from select teams, you
Mhm.
know, not really someone destined to go play in the best league in the world. So I identified my NHL as an NCAA. I'm like, if
Mhm.
I could just like get a scholarship, go play hockey for four extra years, get an education, like that would be pretty damn sweet, right?
When did you think of that? When was okay, NHL is probably out of my view. I'm coming
Yeah.
in I'm just making fourth liner. I'm still there though. When did you decide, hey, can I make the NCAA?
Oh, that was well, probably around 14. I knew like pro hockey wasn't really going to be a thing for me.
Mhm.
So that's when I knew about the college route too, because a big part of that was, some guys go play major junior, right? So again, like I had a chance to go do one of those things. Like for me, like I could always hit, and I was a really good skater, and I was one of the best at hitting. Right? That's how I made it at the end of the day. Um, so I'm like, man, if I can be the best at that, then I could probably play junior and probably get to the NCAA somewhere. Um, so yeah, around 14, I had that vision and that direction that I wasn't going to go play major junior because I didn't have the option to go play major junior. I didn't get any invites to like. I think I might have got the odd invite to camps, but my parents were like, we're not paying $300 for you to go play here when you want to go to college anyway. So it
Fair.
was an easy decision for me and the family. So yeah, I went to Vernon with chasing this NCAA dream. Uh, and again, my first year basically fought my way onto the team and into the league and fought to stay there. Uh, and then that first year goes by. Again, I play, I think, 55 games, scored one goal, uh, maybe 25 fights, right? But I, solidified my role in a way and
Now, what
started developing that reputation.
was that goal, snipe, or was it like off the helmet and in, or?
That was a nice goal, actually. Yeah, it was a really nice goal. We started in our end. I I I don't remember every exact detail, but enough that I can still see it in my head where Yeah, like I was the off wing in our D zone and we won it. And it wasn't even a set play, but the D man chipped it out and I was like pretty much on a breakaway. The guy was really close behind me and I just shot it top, I think it was top blocker, like on my offside. So everyone was like, what the fuck was that? Where was that all year?
Just
But
you
yeah,
got the
no,
chance.
yeah, it was a good goal. So, and then fast forward to my second year at Brown, or sorry, at in Vernon. Uh, Played a little more like third, fourth line, so I got a little bit more of an opportunity, and part of that was guys just go on and go to college, and right, you're an established guy now, not a rookie. So I got a little more opportunity with penalty killing. Uh, I think I had like 18 points in 60 games. I might not have played all 60, I can't remember. But, so I wasn't a total schmuck anymore. Like, hey, this guy can kind of play. Uh, I wasn't lighting up the score sheet by any means. Again, not someone destined to play pro hockey. Like I still couldn't even get a scholarship my second year in Vernon. I didn't even talk to one scout because they weren't really looking for those kind of guys, right?
Mhm.
You can't fight in college. Um, and that's when this burn injury happened and my real first taste of like really hard uh, and trying adversity was after this year, and that's when the fire accident happened. Um, so with all this said, like I really, from the age of like I'd say 16, when I hit puberty, uh, I started just, and part of it could have been like a compensation thing, but I mean, I really can look back now and just I was just always like that guy doing stupid shit for adrenaline,
Mhm.
attention, feeding that young ego. And like I said, maybe a compensation thing for always being the smallest kid. And not that I wasn't like a popular kid or anything, but maybe it was like, hey, now's my time kind of thing. And I was also like living up to that fighter stereotype in a way. And I got labeled like he's the crazy kid from Revelstoke. And I like that. Right,
It's
but
got
again, but that's all ego and that's all that I'm just living up to this fighter stereotype and what I think that should look like, right?
you're building your identity around it, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And so with that said, I was also a pyro, so I was always messing around on our team parties with like gas and fire, being an idiot. And on the night of this accident, I had nearly 2 liters of gas. So it was, I got about a liter and a half of gas. Uh, Basically, I was blowing up uh, bottles full of gas. So like kind of like a Molotov cocktail, but I would actually fill the bottles up and put the lid back on and like set them in the fire, and it would be like a giant flamethrower and like an explosion straight up into the air, like 40 feet. So again, not smart, but I kind of framed of where this was all coming from, like and again, I got all the attention, and I was popular. I was a crazy guy, and I liked that. So the year before, I had done this show at our year-end party when we went camping with beer bottles and everything went off without a hitch, and the night continued, and whatever. No one thought really much of it. So the next year, after we had lost in the finals to Surrey, the guys were like, "Hey, Patty, you gonna do your pyro show this year?" And I said, "Yeah, man, of course." So I think, well, okay, I got to make this bigger and better. What do I do? And of course, in the moment, I'm like, I need more gas. Um, so instead of filling up beer bottles, I grabbed wine bottles and I was walking around the fire and had like the 2 bottles in my like kangaroo pouch like this in my sweater, and the bottoms of the bottles hit and busted, and then so now I have all that gas, a liter and a half of gas spilled from my basically my nipples to my knees. And like we had obviously been drinking, but I still knew like, hey, there's a fire there. I just dumped all this gas on myself. I probably shouldn't get too close. But I just didn't respect the dangers of gasoline and the vapors surrounding that. So, at one point I'm like, man, I reek like gas. I'm just gonna toss this sweater in the fire. I might as well. And I don't know why I decided to do that. I figured, either it was better than littering and or well, I might as well just burn it and light that up in flames, kind of, you know what I mean? And I thought I kept a safe distance, and yeah, that it was almost like a detonator cord to dynamite. Like that cloud just of flame kind of just followed me, and I basically went up, or I did go up, and then that's when it all started, man.
Yeah, man, I remember reading that part or listening to that part in your book, and I'm like, "Holy cow!" Like, I remember leaving the barbecue on, and I couldn't get a match lit, so I went and got a
Mm.
match, and I threw it on the barbecue, and just kind of poof right into my face.
Yeah,
It kind of singed my eyebrows, and the smell, like I still remember the smell.
that
I couldn't imagine.
yeah. So I remember two things very, very vividly from that night. Um, I mean, I don't know. People ask me how long were you on fire for, and I couldn't tell you. It's like an out of body experience almost, and you're in so much shock. But long enough that there was some very serious damage done, and like all my clothes were like there was nothing left of them. So maybe 20 seconds. Uh, I don't know, give or take.
So, how did they get you out?
So
Like,
they were so when I as soon as I went up, unfortunately, that fight or flight response kicked in, and I just bolted, which was the worst thing I could have done, but I wasn't in control, right? Uh, and I was pretty fast. So like before anyone could kind of realize like how serious it was, I was gone, right? And I was like rolling around, jumping. There was no water, grass, snow, nothing. It was just dirt and rocks. So I was just after a while when it was just my skin, like I'd shit embedded like in my raw skin. It was nasty. Um, and then they finally it's so crazy how like when I got tackled, because at some point when I realized like this could be it. Like if I can't get this out. And I just, you know, remember thinking that, and as soon as I had that thought, boom, I got tackled finally, and they started beating me with their jackets and smothering it because the gas fire almost like it just jumps around on you. You can't just like tap it out or
yeah.
right. So it just wouldn't go out. And so you have to smother it. And anyways, going back to my thought there, the two things that I remember the most from that night and then from the car ride, because we had no service, so we couldn't call 911. Someone had to drive us, and thankfully one of the guy's girlfriends wasn't drinking. But I had like a 30-plus minute car ride, which was the fucking pinnacle of pain. Like, once that shock wore off, I was, like, blacking out. My body was just like, "See ya, we can't handle this." I was, like, screaming, and it was pretty ugly scene, but, uh, I guess I could include the pain in there for what I remember, but smell was number 1.
Mhm.
Like, that whole ride, I'll never forget the smell of like, so you said, even, like, burnt hair, like, burning flesh is infinitely more disgusting. That smell was I just remember, like, the 2 people driving were just like could not breathe, it was so bad. He said he never got the smell out of his car, ever. He got it professionally cleaned, couldn't get it out.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, um, and then the other thing I remember is everyone's look on their faces when I was, like, after the accident, I got situated on a cooler, trying to, like, process, like, what the fuck had just happened.
Mm.
Um, but again, I was in total shock. I wasn't in any pain, but I knew it was really bad when I started, like, looking at people, uh, and they were like some people were crying, some people were, like, kinda panic whispering, like, "What are we gonna do? Like, we gotta get him out of here," kinda thing, and they're, like, looking at me, and I just remember, like, looking down at my body and meeting their gaze, and that's when I was like, I think I've fucked up pretty bad here."
Mm.
Um, so and then we finally made it to Vernon Hospital. Like that ride was, yeah, again, it was pure torture. I remember finally seeing the emergency room lights, and I just couldn't wait to get out of that car because the pain was so bad. I actually jumped out while it was still moving and like skidded, like rolled it near to the to the entrance of the emergency room, ass naked, right? I have nothing on. And I like always to shed light on it, I just tell people like imagine the emergency room at whatever 2 a.m., right? Like you probably have your screaming baby, maybe someone has like chest pains, someone picked a fight with the wrong guy at the bar and he needs to get some stitches or whatever, and in comes this like ass naked, bleeding, filthy, burnt guy, like screaming at the top of his lungs. I can imagine everyone was just like, "Yeah, you can help him."
Yeah, I remember listening to that part because I like to listen to books when I'm at the gym. That's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
my thing. I call it my learning girl.
yeah, yeah.
But I remember
In
just
multiple ways, yeah,
yeah, I just stopped and I'm like, I just I could almost feel or I could just visualize the you tumbling on the cement for some reason. I could
it was.
almost feel it. I couldn't obviously, but I could just that really got me because I just for some reason I just that one part you're just like tumbling over cement, your skin's falling off, you're
Yeah, man, it
naked,
was.
and then running into a hospital.
Yeah, it was wild. It really was. It's like a scene out of a movie almost, I guess, but that just gives you an idea of, like, how bad the pain was. I didn't dive out when we were going, like, 30, 40 kilometers an hour, obviously, um, but maybe 15, 20. Like,
It doesn't
yeah, I
matter.
don't I can tell you, but the pain was that bad, I couldn't wait 3 more seconds to get to that door. Like, I was like, "I get it." You know what I mean? Get in there because it was just like nothing I had ever or probably will ever feel again. Well, I shouldn't say that. The parts in the burn unit were pretty much up there. But but yeah, that's how it that's kind of how the journey started in terms of recovery because I don't remember anything after I ran into that hospital. They I'm assuming uh knocked me out pretty quick. And then I was airlifted to Vancouver I think like 3-ish hours later.
Mm.
4-ish hours later, once I was, like, stable and all that stuff, and then woke up in Vancouver. I didn't know I was in Vancouver when I woke up. So, I remember my girlfriend at the time, my now ex-wife, which is a whole other story, but, I remember asking my parents 'cause I woke up the first few days were super foggy, I don't really remember that much. I just remember, like, this initial recognition of where I was uh and then seeing my parents' faces, like, really foggy and, like, they were really emotional, and I just remember, uh, it just wasn't a good feeling, right? And then you know, the pain level, but I remember asking my parents, like, "Does Claire know?" My ex, and they're like, "Yeah, she knows," and I was like, "Is she here?" And they're like, "You're in Vancouver, bud." I was like, "What?" And then I was like started thinking back, like, to the injury and I'm like, "Oh, man, I think I've really fucked up here," kind of thing, and drift off to sleep for another 6 hours and slowly wake out of it, drift off to sleep for 6 hours, but yeah, that was kind of the first few days.
Yeah, that's tough, man. And how long were you in Vancouver? Like that was a road to recovery, and you
Yeah.
did it faster than probably most.
Yeah, so jumping ahead, yeah, I was in there for 6 weeks. I was supposed to be in there all summer. So this happened in April. They told me I would be in there through the summer.
And you have
Like,
hockey season coming
well,
up.
plan to be there through the summer. It's gonna be a long road kind of thing. Yeah, and then I had hockey coming up. So that's like really like the meat of, I guess, the story was um like I figured my hockey career was over because the doctor told me it was over on day 3, I come out of my first debridement procedure,
Can you
which
tell people what debridement is?
yeah, so the third degree burns, that scar tissue builds up so fast and so thick that if they need to slough that skin off basically. So debridement is basically skinning you alive. So they do it with scalpels and knives, and they also do it with uh like a high, basically if you're in a car wash basically, and they like, the water has so much pressure it just is able to like blow that shit right off. So you're left in like really bad pain after that one, because you're freshly basically skinned, right? um so I come out of this first procedure, and the doctor walks into our room because he's going to relay like the prognosis, because at this point we don't know how badly burnt I am. Like, we know it's bad, but I'm been wrapped for like 3 days basically, um until I'm like, okay, you're stable, and my life, I would say, was never in jeopardy. Like, it could have been if I was on fire for another whatever 10 seconds, but um I was stable. There was like obviously very real risks involved with like infection and smoke inhalation and all these things that they were really monitoring. But like my parents, they weren't sure if I was gonna make it. That's how bad it was, right? So he walks into our room, and yeah, he's gonna relay this prognosis. And he looks at my parents right away and says, "It's okay, your son's not gonna die." Like, he he's a very lucky young man. Like, someone was definitely looking out for him, because I don't think his face is going to be permanently scarred, and it doesn't look like we're going to have to skin graft over his joints, which is a very good thing. Like, my grafts literally stop at the top of my knee, so it's pretty crazy.
Hmm.
Because if you graft over that joint, that's a whole other world of problems, right?
Yeah, because you're always moving it.
The movement is just, yeah, real tough. Um, So he said, he will make a full recovery, but he's going to be in here for a long time. And I'd prepare to have a summer here, basically, he said. And he's 40% second, third degree burns. And yeah, he's going to make a full recovery. We're going to focus on rest and pain management, and we'll get your skin graft surgery done here in the next few weeks, kind of thing. And you'll
Mm.
be off to rehab for the whole summer, basically. So I think my parents took some solace in that fact that I was gonna be, okay, relatively speaking. Uh, but in my head, all I thought about was I was like, I have camp in 3.5 months or whatever with the Vipers, right? Because like I was chasing this NCAA dream, and I was like, I just felt like I made some pretty serious jumps my second year. We had a lot of guys leaving into my third and final year. I figured, man, like, if I could just add a few more elements to my game, I'll get a scholarship somewhere. Maybe it's Div 3. Again, I didn't care. But so this is my last year of junior hockey eligibility. So it's my last crack at the can to do this, and to chase that dream. So I asked the doctor, and again, like, to paint the picture for you, I'm fully wrapped 100% head to toe. You can't see any of me. And I mean, I have like little eye slits in my nose oxygen piece and a little mouthpiece. And I asked the doctor this, and I'm sure no one's asked him that question before. And yeah, he kind of just froze, and I was like, oh shit, it's over. And he laid that gavel down and was like, these recoveries take years, not months. Like, you're gonna be in here for a while. You're not gonna be playing hockey in a few months. Like, we'll get you in a pair of skates in a non-competitive environment a couple years down the road when your recovery is complete. So that was that. In that moment, I kissed that dream goodbye, because yeah, I mean, again, this doctor should know. And so I was really dealing with these different emotions. Like, number one, I mean, I was in a shitload of pain, I should say, obviously, but like really, I guess, down and depressed of what my life was supposed to look like now, and that identity gets taken away. And the fact that I wouldn't be able to go chase this dream. But on the other hand, I was very grateful that I was gonna make a full recovery. Um, I would just look a little different. I have some gnarly scars, but I was like, well, hope chicks dig scars apparently, right? Hopefully this many, I guess. And but in a way too, like I almost accepted the consequences for my actions because it all had finally come back to bite me. So yeah, that was basically my first 2 weeks. And then now obviously something changed, right? In
Yeah.
in the story. So that's when that moment came 2 weeks in. I got a call from my junior coach, and he said, I was talking with the coaches from Brown University, and they're looking for a certain type of player. And their exact words were, "We need a guy to put the fear of God in the defenseman of the Ivy League." So, and that's kind of what I did. So my coach is like, "Yeah, well, I got the perfect guy for you. There's just one major problem. He's blew himself up and he's in the burn unit." And they're like, "What?" So my coach is like,
Blew himself up.
"Yeah." Well, these guys were nut jobs, right? Like all the coaches back then, like they were
Yeah.
so great. But I remember having my first talk with the coach, assistant coach from Brown, Danny Brooks. Like the heavy, I'd never heard a Rhode Island accent before. They're just hilarious, man. And he's just wired so tight. He'd always like be like, "Volpatti, brother, the fuck you blew yourself up?" That's a terrible accent, but
Oh, man,
uh
I love it when you do that in your book. It's good. It doesn't
that
matter
was the
how good
hard.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny that we were revisiting that, but the accent, I totally forgot about that. That was the hardest thing. I'm like, I sound British.
It's okay, man.
Yeah,
You put emphasis on it and it makes the book
yeah,
better.
yeah. No, thanks, man. So, um, anyway, so yeah, we called the coach from Brown and let the conversation was very open ended. They just were like, "We're sorry to hear what happened. We wish you the best in recovery." And like almost as a formality, maybe we'll get to see you play one day down the road. And we hung up the phone, and I remember getting really emotional with my mom and dad there because again, I had worked my whole life to just talk to one of these guys, and I'd finally done it. And I'm like, look where I am. Like, look what I've done to myself. And I sat with that, and then so I naturally started asking questions. I'm like, okay, so am I sure I can't play? Like, so they're telling me this, like, why? What's the reason? And there was a really good long list of reasons why, right? Like time in the burn unit, I was going to be there for a long time. Infection was probably number one. There's a major risk, and burns are very susceptible to infection, especially if you're talking about putting it under hockey gear that's never been washed in whatever 8 years, right? Some of that stuff. So not an ideal environment for an open burn. Like I had open second degree burns for, oh god, probably 6 months, 7 months. Like they just wouldn't close. It took forever. Um, the skin grafts were going to be too limiting, too painful. Again, take a couple years to fully mature and heal. I had to wear a full body suit, from nipples to knees. You can't sweat from those grafted areas now, right? Because the third degree burn, you go through everything, nerve glands, sweat glands, it's all gone. Uh, so if you're talking about, again, at this time, we didn't know, was I going to be like 20%, 30, closer to 40% skin grafts? Like if that was the case, there's potential complications there with heart rate and being able to cool your body down, right? So uh, there, I was aware of all these reasons, but in that moment, I was like, I feel like they're telling me it's going to hurt too much. And I was like, well, it can't be worse than what I've just gone through these last 2 weeks, which again was a little bit naive thinking because I didn't know what was in store for me. But I just thought those aren't good enough reasons for me to just give up on this dream. Like I'm that close. I can feel it, right? To that dream, that NCAA dream. And I just said, I'm like, fuck that. I don't accept this prognosis that they've laid, and basically dictated what my future's supposed to look like because I'm now a burn survivor. So yeah, I made a choice. And I think for me, it's always really started with that, and I think that's a really powerful commitment to yourself when because when you make that 100% in your soul wholeheartedly that I am gonna do this or die trying. Like in that moment, I was willing to die before giving up. I made that choice and that promise to myself. Like again, the real major risk was infection. Like if I get sepsis, I was like, fuck it, I'll deal with it then. Like I'm willing to take that risk. Uh, the rest of it was, can you deal with this level of pain? Really, is what it was. Like I couldn't make the burns worse, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, and that's how. So people ask me like, well, how did you discover visualization? So this is how. Like I was bedridden in a burn unit. My body was out of commission. I couldn't move, and I had made this decision and this choice. So my mind was all I had. So I figured that was my only way out. And like I had heard of visualization, but I didn't, read any like fancy books or anything. I mean, that came later in my life. But at the time, I just started visualizing everything I wanted. So like reframing my relationship with the pain differently, more welcoming the pain as fuel, which in a way, it was. But that made such a big difference, and, like, I would even imagine and visualize healing at a cellular level, like, the cells getting stronger, those third-degree areas shrinking and healing, walking out of the burn unit, uh, that home opener for the Vipers, like, really trying to almost, like, create an experience and, like, be there, right, and live there in that moment, and then the guiding star in this visualization was that commitment letter to Brown, so I would just obsess over that. Imagine having the paper and the pen in the other hand and just feeling and seeing that signature hit the paper, knowing I had, overcome the quote unquote impossible to get there. And it really unlocked a superpower in me. It did. And it happened pretty quick where I realized like I almost got to escape my like physical shitty reality and just go live as this Aaron Volpatti, right? And it gave me such an immense sense of belief and trust that I was going to do it, because it started to spill over. And yeah, I mean, we're skipping over a lot of the recovery and I guess the hell that next really year, but especially 6 months was. Uh, but I played in the home opener,
That's okay. They
and
can get your book.
yeah,
They
go
can they
read the
get
book.
all that information in your book,
Go
right?
read the
We don't
book.
want to
There's
give them everything.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you a list of complications, like I had kidney stones the day after I got released. I had an emergency appendectomy 10 days before camp. Like, so I had this mindset, but the body is always the governor, right? Our bodies are the governor. So it was just begging me to stop. And it was like, hey, we're trying to heal from like a major surgery here. Like, you're not just rehabbing, like, you're trying to train. Like, I wasn't even supposed to be walking, let alone training, right? So all these complications. Um, but yeah, I went to or I played in the season opener. I committed to Brown. Yeah, about 2 months later in November of 2005, and but like I was holding on by a thread. I really was. Like I wouldn't have made it. I don't think. It's tough to say looking back, but it would have been a real struggle to make it through that whole season. Like I was on crutches to and from the rink with complications, and I just could barely move. My skin was on fire. Uh, but I knew Brown was coming to watch me, so I'm like, I got to make it to that game. And this is when you could get shot up with any painkiller you wanted, by the way. So times are different. And it also back then, like the player made the decision if they played, not the coach. So that's flipped now
Yeah.
for the better with headshots and concussions, right? Which like I've played with so many concussions. It's scary to think about. So it's changed for the better. But I also look back and I realize like if that was today, I don't think anyone would have let me play.
No, well, you
Now
had
I
to wear
would
a
have,
bodysuit, right, underneath?
yeah, but I had open burns on my all down on my arm. So this was all covered in second degree burns that I had to wear like an arm sling. Who's the basketball player? Like that one of
Oh,
those guys?
LeBron? Yeah.
Or maybe, yeah, I was thinking of the other guy, I can't remember. But yeah. Uh and then remember, like, when they do the grafting surgery, they take skin from your body to harvest and put on the third degree areas. So I essentially went from 40% second and third degree burns to like 70, 65, 70% because those harvested sites are second degree burns. They take the first two layers, right?
Ugh.
So I had to deal with all those. Like, my whole right and left calf were like skinned. Those were closed by the time I started playing, but they were still like pretty fresh. This is just a few months later. And then, but yeah, my right arm and hand, uh, that was like the second degree burns on that. Fuck, they just didn't close for a long time. It's tough because it's like you're supposed to keep them covered. Even when I sleep, for example, or when I slept then, it's like I'm supposed to keep these covered, but when I do, and then I have to take that off, it just, it's like a scab. It just peels everything off, and I'm starting from scratch. So I'm like, well, fuck. Like, what? I'm like, should I just say fuck it and just put it under my gear? Which, obviously I didn't want to do because probably would get sepsis if that was the case. But like even sleeping, I remember having that battle where I'm like, I'm gonna just not cover it now. I mean, I had to wear my bodysuit, like I said,
Mm.
for scarring, but the second degree burns, like on some of my legs and arm especially, I would just wake up in the morning if I didn't cover them and the sheets would just be glued to it. And I'm like, well, I can't win with these things. So it took forever to close. But
Yeah, that's crazy. I couldn't imagine that, you had to take skin from another part of your body to help your other body. So you're just like, "Okay, well,
yeah,
I'm gonna injure this part to heal this part."
that's pretty wild, man. So, like, I mean, the real serious burn injuries, and because remember in Vancouver, like, at the time there were only 10 beds there, so that's the 10 worst burns in the province.
Mhm.
Like, I was not that. There were people fighting for their lives, like, in comas and shit, and they're like 90% burns, I remember one lady there, and someone actually reached out to me and said she's doing okay. Through That's why social media is great.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of negative things about it, right? As we know, but that's one of the reasons it's great. Someone reached out to me. I I think they said they read the book and they're like, "Yeah, Patty," or can't remember what her name is, obviously, but they're like, "She's doing good. Like, she's I can't remember what she does, but she's like she has a family. She's doing great." And that I'm like, that's so cool because I remember being in there and she was in a fucking coma, like fighting for her life. And when she came out of that, I remember like just the burn unit is it's not really a fun place to be. It's like there's just screaming at all times of the day, especially when you hear young kids.
Mm.
That's what really got me was like the 2-year-old that had the pot of boiling water on her, or like
That's tough.
they had the children's area, but then like they would just get transferred around. And anyway, so this lady was at a party or like a get together, and they had a fire, and a truck was like parked on a hill, and the brake somehow released and came down and hit her and pinned her on the fire. Like, so you can imagine just even being on coals for like 5 seconds, let alone like I can't
Mhm.
imagine. So she was not in good shape. So I was definitely like not in the top 5 in that burn unit. But so those people, they need skin donors because their whole body's fucking burned, right?
Mhm.
So luckily they were able to harvest, from my own body. Um, it's it was funny. I had so like all my skin graft on my torso is all from my right calf. So when that started healing about I don't know, maybe like 3 months later, I started getting hair because it's from my leg. And I'm not a hairy guy. Like I
Yeah.
got no hair on my chest. So I got this big, like, massive hair patch, and I'm like, "Is this gonna stay?" Not like, at that point, I'm like, I look so fucked up anyways. I'm like, "Yeah, that's kinda fitting," and, like, "Hey, I'm here, I don't really care," but I asked the nurse and when I went for a follow-up, and I'm like, "Does this stay here?" She's like, "No, that'll fall out." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's bonus, I guess."
That's man, that's so crazy.
That's wild. It just started growing hair, but yeah, she's like, "It won't stay there," and it didn't, so
Well, you know what? I'm kinda my hair's starting to cut itself. Maybe I gotta skin graft my calf and put it on
there
my
you
head.
go.
I don't maybe
There
that's
you
the
go.
cure to male pattern baldness. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure they got something better. Well, they do the plugs, I think, now or something. I don't know. Luckily, I have hair, it's just going gray.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you know what, man? I was at my own house at a party, and we had a tire rim as a fire pit, and I actually but
I
tripped
think you
over a
told me
log,
that, yeah.
and I grabbed it, the tire rim, and so my body and I sat there for a sec, and then I turned myself off, so I never went into the fire.
Yeah.
But I went to bed after that. Right? I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then I woke up and my hands were just aching, and it looked like two sausages were on my palms.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I better go do something about this. So I had to get it professionally changed for a month, and I had to get it trained. And it
Yeah.
was right in the middle of summertime, so here I am like this, right?
So you might have had a second-degree burn there
It
or
sucked.
bad
Like,
first degree maybe.
I couldn't imagine getting going through that, like this, the pain, the agony, the just the torture of that, man.
So, so the pressure that was from that burn, right? That your body builds up in blisters, like, just imagine that for, like, this type of injury. It's crazy, and that's why you need the debridement because, like, literally, like, these blisters just would get giant and giant.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the hydrosurgical pressure washer, but they also, like, they literally would carve gashes in my legs and torso to relieve pressure. Like, I was a seeping burn survivor at that point, like, because the blisters would just get so big and your body would have so much pressure from the damage done. It was yeah, it's pretty wild.
That's
It's
crazy.
the body's so crazy, man, just of the ability to heal. And obviously like the mind piece of that for me was so huge. Like I know that I healed quicker because of my mind
Mhm.
to get out of there, right?
Well, it's like Dr. Joe Dispenza. I remember hearing him on a podcast one time and
Yeah,
becoming
totally.
supernatural and just the power of the mind body connection. And it's a lot of bodybuilders say that too, just working out.
Yeah.
Visualize and contract your muscles and watch yourself do that in your mind, and you get better connection, and it's crazy
You're so
on
much stronger if you do that.
yeah.
Yeah. I bet I bet there's probably a study out there. I bet you're I bet you're minimum like 10-15% stronger if you before you do like a lift or something. That I mean, I know for me, it's a huge difference, right? It might be more than that. But, you know, if you visualize and take some breaths and breathe into that muscle and be like, I'm engaging, I'm firing, I'm sending oxygen and energy into that muscle right now. And then you go and lift that and you visualize like just if it's say bench press, like you visualize like popping that thing off,
Mhm.
it's gonna make a huge difference. Right.
Man, your story, you kind of remind me a little bit of Goggins. It's hey, don't tell me what I can't do. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it by
Yeah.
then, and I don't care how it hurts. Yeah, you hear the story of Goggins and like
That's funny you mentioned that because
what happens to him.
other people have said that. So I like David Goggins and I in the sense of like I resonate with a lot of his stuff.
Mhm.
But like I don't know, on the flip side, I'm like I I think I don't know, like I don't necessarily agree, like just because and he probably doesn't agree with this, but like whatever. Everyone has their opinion, but I'm all for like obsession and doing shit other people don't want to do because it does like it
Mhm.
makes you feel unstoppable. It does. I've experienced that. Uh, but like also different times in my life where I would rather spend time with my family,
Yeah,
and get more than 4 hours of sleep. Uh, you know, because again, that's I I don't know, like, I do wanna find joy in my life, and there is joy in suffering, in some
Mhm.
reward in suffering, obviously, but, yeah, like, to me, I'm like, does this guy, like, he must not does he have a wife? Like, and if he does, like, what does that look like? Because you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with some things he preaches, but maybe not fully. But that's who he is, and he lives that, and he owns that, and I respect that, right? So, just because we have different views doesn't make like you're like more of a badass because you want to run a marathon, uh, and versus again, maybe he doesn't have kids. I don't know, but like to me, that's not a good trade off. I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
he
So,
has a wife now. I listened to his second book, and
oh yeah,
he's an acquired taste. Like, depends, like,
yeah.
on if you have that mindset, then yeah, but it could be hard on some kids that listen to his book and think, hey, I need to do this, this, and this. I got to be psycho,
I,
right?
I'm all
To get it.
I'm all for cycle because I remember like even in my burn recovery, like people were like, "This is fucking insane, man. You got to stop or you're gonna die." And I remember liking that. Like that means I'm doing something right if you
Yeah,
think that, which I think is a lot of like his dialogue.
yeah.
Um, Again, he'd probably like laugh at that comment with the family and think like, "Well, you're a pussy or whatever," right? So yeah, again, I like resonate with some of the stuff. The other stuff, like again, I'm a big family guy, right?
Yeah.
So
No, and I see that.
I'd rather throw my kid on my back and I'll go for a hike, sure. But
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna go run a marathon at 2 a.m., get 3 hours of sleep and come home and I got a full-time job and work and I gotta balance kids. Like that doesn't it's not there's no trade-off there for me,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah.
Anyway, a different
So
topic, but
so yeah, you're in the burn unit. You set your mindset. You're like, I'm going to do this. I made home opener. I'm going through pain. Brown's coming to see me. I'm going through all these other things, but I want to play at Brown.
yeah.
What happens next?
Well, yeah, so they come like I said, I was holding on because I knew they were like, "We're coming to watch you play in I think it was November of that season." So that and I got off to surprisingly, I got off to a pretty good start. I had a point a game in my first 9 games or something like that. So I was like, "Holy shit, like maybe this is the year like I'm going to get a scholarship." But again, like my I was really really struggling with just being able to function and walk, let alone skate. Uh, so they come long short story short, they come, they offer me, and then I hang up my skates for the rest of that year, which was hard to do because like I don't know, I think I trained myself just to push through everything, but we had real conversations with the doctors and the coaches at Brown, and they were like, this is crazy. Like he needs to get better because you know it's wild basically. So I said, yeah, that's probably the best thing. I wanted to try and come back for playoffs because remember we lost in the league finals the year before.
Mhm.
So part of this was I wanted to win a fucking championship with that team and those guys. Like that was a big part. So that paired with my journey was like, there's no way I was stopping, right? So I thought, yeah, like I'm in bad shape. I can, yeah, like barely walk around. Um, so I said, okay, let's shut it down till playoffs. And and yeah, I remember so that was like what's that, 4 months later, I came back for playoffs and it was still pretty rough. And I remember I even sat out our last game. We lost to Salmon Arm in this was that it might have been even just the first, yeah, it was the first round, I think. No, maybe it was the second round.
Mhm.
I think it was the second round. So I played the first round, started having issues with my pelvis. And that was the other big thing was like there was so much damage to my legs. I had this really bad pelvis issue and the doctors, no one could really put their finger on it, but they're like, well, like you have so much damage to your legs that like something's compensating. And that was causing me a ton of pain. Um, so played the first series, And then the second series was kind of in and out of the lineup. And I remember sitting in the stands for my last junior game. So that was hard, but like I was excited for the future and knowing that I had done it and you know achieved my dream of going to Brown. Um, so that was it, and I went to Brown, and the doctors were right. It took me 2 years to fully recover. So that freshman year at Brown was still a bit of a struggle in terms of just burn care and this pelvis complication was a weird thing. And right as soon as that 2-year mark hit, it was like boom, it went away, and my bodysuit came off, and I was like, I feel like, my pre-burn self for the most part. I was still like the grafts were still stiff. They still are. But I mean, I looked a lot different. Those scars, like, a scar is a very
Mhm.
dark purple. So I had like now they look, pretty skin colored and they look great. But at the time for about 3-4 years, they were like pretty dark purple. So I looked pretty gnarly. But so the doctors were right. I just happened to mix in some hockey and in between,
Mhm.
right? But so I think for people, remember when you go through an experience like that, uh, your perspective on life changes a lot. So, and when I went to Brown, with that said, like I had made it, that
Mhm.
I had like reached the pinnacle, and so I just went and had a blast, and I had fun. Like, away from the rink, I just had a good time, man, and I lived up the US college experience, and, I worked my ass off still, right? Don't get me wrong, but, yeah, I played on the 4th line. I was taking pre-med, so I was gonna figured I'd go be a doctor or stay involved in sports science or something like that. Like, never a thought about pro hockey at this point,
Mhm.
'cause I didn't have the wherewithal to think like, "Hey, if I could do that, like, what else could I do?" It just wasn't that. I just went and had fun. Um,
So I just want to point out that for people that watch this or people that are listening that don't know Aaron, he's actually very smart. Hey, he played as a fighter. He lit multi cocktails, but he's actually pretty smart. And
yeah,
he went to an
I'm not a
Ivy League
complete
school.
I'm not a complete idiot as much as it might seem like that. Uh, I'm yeah, book smart, but maybe not, in some other ways, no, but yeah, I seem to be allergic to the easy way with things. I just go about things it's the hard way, and um, it's fun. Like all my friends and family, like being injury prone, like that's a thing for me. I don't know. I just attract pain and injury,
But he
but yeah,
made it work.
I was always a good student. Like I always had straight A's, and um, but again, like for me, part of that was like I'm not the smartest guy. I just fucking worked my ass off. So, and that was a big piece of how I grew up. My dad's like, I don't care like what grade you get, you work harder than anyone. And I did. Like I worked hard at school and I enjoyed it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't get into Brown without hockey. I mean, I'd like to think I could, but the reality is no. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I navigated my way through there for sure. But um, so yeah, I guess again, something had obviously changed at Brown to think of pro hockey because I had not done that at all. And that was after my junior year. So I was 24 years old, and the assistant coach came up to me after our season and he's like, "Have you ever thought about playing pro hockey?" And I was like, I laughed in his face and said, "No, like I, why would I think that? I mean, I don't have an agent. I've never talked to a pro scout. I play on the 3rd and 4th line in one of the worst teams in college. Like, no offense, we suck. So, no, I have never thought about it." And he's like, he kind of laughed, and he's like, I've never seen anyone hit the way you can hit. You can skate. I know you can fight from your junior days. He said, like, I think if you just really worked on your game with some of the skill stuff, I really think you could have a solid 5-10 year career in the American League, and maybe even get a shot in the show one day. Like, you never know. And I was kind of like, thank you. I didn't really know what to say. So I went home that night and I just remember thinking more about what he had said. And it's like all these fucking light bulbs went off in my head. And I almost had to like slap myself in the face and be like, huh, like, what have you been doing these last 3 years? Like, you might have been leaving a little bit on the table here.
Mhm.
Because I immediately thought back to that journey from the burn unit. And I was like, if I can do that, like, why can't I go play in the NHL? I mean, that seems easier than what I had done previously, right? And it was just this I mean, people say the word epiphany, but it truly was. It was just like this monumental moment where I was like, shit, why didn't I think of this sooner? Uh, right? So, yeah, I made a choice right then and there, and I was like I remember asking myself, like, "You wanna play in the NHL?" And I just I was doing, like, a meditation or visualization, and I remember asking myself that, and I opened my eyes and was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." And, and again, like, it all started with the choice, and so I made that promise, like, I was gonna go play in the NHL or die trying. I mean, the risk of dying at this point wasn't,
A little lower
super
than before, hey?
super real. But yeah, just like I didn't care if I was like, you'd have to cut my legs off before I stopped, kind of thing, chasing that dream, right? Because I just thought like I remember sitting there thinking like, man, like me, a little small town kid from Revelstoke, who was never supposed to play pro hockey, let alone like aside from this burn injury, forget about that, just in general. And then you tack that on, like I with all the things that have happened, I could get paid to play the game I love. And I'm like, and I just thought like, okay, we're gonna do that. And so once I made that choice, I went back to okay, well, what do I know got me out of that burn unit? And it was the mind, the visualization practice, because I had totally abandoned that my first 3 years. Again, like I had achieved the dream. So I was like, okay, throw that stuff out. Let's just go have fun. Right. I just didn't, I was too young and naive to think like,
Mm.
hey, what else could I do? Uh, so as soon as I went back to that, and so this is really when I got the idea of the technique I teach now in my visualization consulting business, and that is the cinematic mind mapping, which is also in the book at the end, right? Um, where it's like I literally thought about this journey and my life as a movie. So I get to be the director. What does that look like? So there's no limitations. It gets to be whatever you want. So mine was obviously the NHL, right? So I would start it with that journey from the burn unit and relive sort of that superpower that it gave me, and then really thinking about my senior year at Brown and just like dominating and executing everything on the ice and just the way I felt off the ice, being bigger, more confident, just like going on this mission. Like I probably played 10 seasons in my head before the season even started, right? And then the guiding star and the ending of this movie was now the NHL. So that NHL contract, that first game walking out the tunnel, and again, it's just like the difference that that made in my soul was it was pretty incredible. Not only for like that belief and trust and living in this movie, right? But the other the reality is that, this isn't like a sit on your ass and eat shitty food on the couch and watch Netflix and visualize until your dreams come true, obviously.
Mhm.
Right. So that's the other the other piece with this practice is it drives obsession, right? So it nourished that obsession and it nourished like the daily choices and habits. Like I made sure those aligned with this vision, like that. And if your vision is like something very high achieving, so obviously the NHL would be that, the best league in the world, then the sacrifice and obsession has to match that. It's like a very linear relationship,
Mhm.
right? Uh, so that was another big piece for me where not only does the visualization again, and science tells us why, and Joe Dispenza talks a lot about why that can play such a big even biological role, right? A visualization practice powerful, where again, like he states this too, if you can have an experience, so if and what equals experience? Do you remember if you've read
Like,
his books?
I don't remember it.
So emotion, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Experience and emotion, yeah.
So if you can have a meditation, or like, so for me, this visualization practice, which I felt, but I didn't know any of this at the time. Um, I shouldn't say any of it. Like, I was scratching the surface at Brown and learning about the brain, and I was kind of like, this is cool, because I had no idea like what the science behind what I had gone through with the burn unit. And I was just super fascinated with it. And I started reading more books and became more educated on a practice I had already developed, but didn't know the ins and outs, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it was really cool. But yeah, as soon as you can have an experience, then you start evoking change in your subconscious mind, and you start rewiring circuits, and you feel different, and that's when shit really starts changing. So it's pretty cool. And that's, really what manifestation is, in a way, where your brain thinks that that's event has happened, because your brain doesn't know the difference between a physical event and mentally rehearsing something. Caveat is if you can make it seem real, and if you
Seem
have
real,
an
yeah.
experience. So, like, simply thinking positive isn't quite enough, right? And I don't know if you've had that experience with your own mental health, but I know, like, for me, when that shit hit me hard after hockey, uh, it didn't really do much. So it can help, but and I think, like, gratitude more would be, and this is a whole
Mhm.
other topic, obviously, but um, we know that thinking positive, it can help. It's not quite enough. So if you can have that emotion and that experience now with the thought, aka the visualization, or what's projected onto, like, your brain's big screen TV, that's when you really can start evoking real positive change, right?
Yeah.
So uh, I found that when I had this thought of this movie, like, it just gave me such again, like, an almost indescribable sense of belief and trust in myself, that because I was slowly becoming that person without even actually recognizing it in that moment.
Mhm.
Uh, but again, the obsession piece that it drove away from, just that feeling, I guess, because the reality is, you open up your eyes and you come out of this practice, and you're like, holy fuck, what was that? Like, that felt amazing. Like, you, again, your brain thinks it's happened, but the reality is, you look and you're like, you're in your room, or you're outside, or wherever you are, and you're like, I got to make sure I do everything I can to make that happen. And so
Mhm.
that's what I lived. Um, so I mean, you want to talk about obsessed? Like, I literally lived at the arena that summer. Like, I would sleep there some nights, and I was there for 12 hours a day. Like, I'd work out 3 times a day. I'd visualize for like an hour a day, watch video, shoot thousands of pucks, like, work on my skill, because that was the part I really needed to work on, right? So just, yeah, just became obsessed, and just, I was a shot out of a cannon that senior year. And so that's funny, like, people look at my stats. There's like that one senior year, like, why, like, he's just this fighter with, like, anywhere from 5 to 10 points a year, and then, like, boom, almost a point a game. Like, huh, he must have just, like, got lucky or figured something out, but this is why that all happened, right? Just
Yeah.
that preparation and the visualization practice. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, on the physical side, you hear about the 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so that always interested me, and I remember thinking, like, I must have, like, crossed that alone just at that summer, like, just for the amount of hours I put in. Or, maybe not a full 10, but, like, I just blew past that line in that moment. So I was like, yeah, that's interesting. But um, yeah, man, it all came to, like, this kind of grand culmination. And yeah, in 6 months, basically, I went from no one in the NHL knowing who I was, to everyone, really.
Mhm.
And I was probably a top 3, top 5 NCAA free agent. Because again, I put the full package together. Like I was like playing my role. I was killing guys my senior year. Like there was some pretty bad injuries, and I'm not advocating for hurting anyone, but like I was like, get out of my way because I'm going here, right? And
Mhm.
like I was almost 25, 215 pounds at the time. Some of these kids are 18 years old, 150. Like it was pretty ugly, right? Uh, so, but when I put the points and the skill with that, then people started coming and noticing. And yeah, I signed with the Canucks, and it's funny, my parents didn't even believe me when I called them. I don't know if you remember that part in the
Yeah.
book, but yeah, like so remember, I never told anyone about this plan I had. Like it was almost like my in a way sacred for me. And and there was nothing to share until I had actually done it. So I just, yeah, it was like this. I just lived in my own little world with this visualization practice, and just even in, the physical world, where just going on this mission and all that. And so I remember calling them, obviously, naturally, after I signed my contract. And I mean, they knew I was having a good year and that I might give the pro hockey thing a shot in the minors, to kind of say I did it for a year or two. That was what they thought. And yeah, I remember calling them and say, "Hey, you know how I told you I was talking with some pro teams?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I was like, "Well, I kind of fibbed a little. Like by pro, I meant the NHL." And there was like a pause, and my dad was like, "Fuck off." And I'm like, "Dad, I'm serious. Like it's probably in the news. It's a pretty popular story in Revelstoke and Vernon, especially with everything that had happened in the burn unit." And like, I'm going to Winnipeg in 2 days to get my feet wet with the Moose. And they're like, "You're not kidding, are you?" And I was like, "No, no, it's real." So it was pretty funny where they didn't believe me. But yeah, and that was the start of the pro journey after that.
Yeah, and it's just I want you to tell everybody what is a double homicide, because that's my
Yeah,
favorite. That's one of my favorite parts. Just
yeah.
that nickname.
My the trainer for the Manitoba Moose coined that one. And I had quite a few in the minors, and that's essentially what got me the call up to the Canucks eventually. But yeah, the double homicide was when I would hit a guy, usually, clean. I mean, I never was a cheap player, but I could hit hard, right? And sometimes there was injuries with that. So the double homicide was one guy down on the ice, staying down from a hit, and then a guy that had jumped me to fight, and then I pop him, and he's now on the ice laying down. And I remember my first one, I like kind of had to step over the guys to get to the penalty box. And he's like, that was the trainer was like, "I've never seen anything like it. It's like a double homicide." And I had another one a month later in Abbotsford, and so that's where all the Canucks brass was. Unfortunately, that kid got hurt pretty badly because his head had hit the ice. So that was scary. I remember feeling sick to my stomach because he was not in good shape. Um, so again, like not advocating for injury, especially with the headshots. Like
Mhm.
the sick part of me, like again, the game, right? Some people have a hard time with this mindset, but the sick part of me was like, if I break your collarbone, like I kind of like that, because it's like, get your head up or get out of my way because I'm going to run you over. Um,
Mhm.
you never wanted to see anyone unconscious or
No.
concussion issues, because that's, can have some major effects, right? So that part was always hard. Um, but again, that was just my mindset. And then I had another, yeah, I don't know, I must have had 4 or 5 of the double homicides. I only had one in the NHL in an exhibition game, and that was, again, partly why I made the full-time roster, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it
So,
was that versus San Jose or something.
yeah, yeah,
I went I
I
actually went
hit
and Googled it.
yeah, I hit uh, Jason Demers coming around the net. It was a good hit, and he didn't expect it, and he didn't come back, got helped off the ice, and I don't know what his injury was, but And then, you know, I knew someone's coming for me probably. So, and it was Brad Winchester, big dude, tough guy. And, you know, he's like, "Hey, we got to go." And I'm like, was waiting for this one. So we square off and yeah, he like, so I guess it wasn't like a standard double homicide where typically they were in the same play. So I'd hit a guy, get jumped right away and beat him up and then off we go. This one came like the next period. Uh, but yeah, we squared off and I remember getting like, I was thrown off because he just kind of like came at me and reached out. And unfortunately, he missed he went to grab me, but he missed. So he was totally exposed. And I kind of just, and I think this is where like the boxing, you know,
Mhm.
growing up boxing had helped. I was kind of like, "Fuck's this guy doing?" And I kind of just popped back like a foot and he was open and I just hit him right there and he went down. Um, and yeah, I remember this was the year after we lost to the Bruins in the finals. So, right. And the consensus was we needed to get tougher. So I thought like that spot was mine because I had played 15 games and they liked how I had played. So I thought I was kind of a shoe-in, but that's not the way it works in the NHL. There's always competition, right? So
Yeah.
we had like 3 other guys in the system, and then they brought in like Owen Nolan and Todd Fedoruk, and I'm like, Jesus, like there's 7 guys fighting for one spot here.
Mhm.
So that exhibition was like that was that was a big moment. And that game, I was like, I felt pretty good because I was like, well, that should pretty much do it, right? And I remember Stan Smeal, who had helped recruit me out of college. I saw him in the tunnel after, and he gave me like a wink as to say like, "Hey, welcome to the team." Like that's put to bed. And and it wasn't. That was my kind of welcome to the NHL full time now kind of thing. Yeah.
That must have been a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, man, it was nice. Yeah. Unfortunately, like that season, that was when I had my shoulder injury, so I missed almost the whole year. So that wasn't ideal, obviously, but
Yeah, and then so you played a couple more seasons, and unfortunately, your kind of career came to an end on a difficult play.
yeah, yeah, neck injury. So I got hit from behind. Obviously, could have been a lot worse. So I'm lucky that way, but got hit from behind. I was able to turn my head at kind of the last second, and but unfortunately, like the discs, they just basically exploded, and um, yeah, I had all these issues going forward, and tried to play, but like I had no, so I never gained feeling back in my thumb and these first 2 fingers. They were just totally numb. So I knew something was going on, and finally told the doctors because like I was trying to get like solidify my role, right? And
Mhm.
I had another year on my deal, but yeah, like there was like a month left in the season, and I'm like, I'm just gonna tough it out. But it got to a point where like my hand was blown off my stick in practice, like, you know, getting in a fight and can't even hold the guy. So I'm like, I need to like see someone. So we got the MRI done and they were like, yeah, you need surgery like yesterday. Your disc is like they say it's like they give me the window analogy. So your every vertebrae has like 4 windows where the nerves innervate, right?
Mhm.
Uh and they look at like the window in terms of how open it is. And it should be 100, but the reality is most people like have some sort of degeneration there. So it might be like 10, 30% closed. He's like, yours is like 99% closed because that disc rupturing has totally blocked that. So that's where your nerve pain's coming from. Like I couldn't even sit like this, just be normal. I constantly had to like be like this. So when I was driving, I was like doing one of these
Oh,
because
really?
to take the pressure off that, because otherwise my arm would start burning and be totally numb. So yeah, I had to get surgery on it. And yeah, I mean, tried to come back the next year and it was just wasn't there. Like I know a few other guys that have had the exact same experience and it was successful in the sense that it relieved the nerve pain, but you just left really, really stiff. Like even now I have issues with it, which in hindsight I would have got the disc replacement, which the guys get now. But this is almost, coming on 10 years pretty soon. So the technology, I'm sure, has advanced a lot there. But tried to come back, ended up deciding with the doctors that, the risk was just too high, which it was. And yeah, that was it, man. It ended just like that after 5.5 years. So I mean, it was a good 5.5 years, but yeah, that's where I guess segueing into life after hockey, like that was a rough time because it just life, as it can come in waves, and at the same time, like the walls just started crumbling down around me after that. So
Yes. What was that transition like from your whole life was hockey, right?
yeah,
There's
exactly.
yeah, driven by I got to make it here.
Yeah,
This is my goal. This is this.
he had
It's
purpose, right? There was
yeah,
purpose. Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's gone, and not even really kind of on your own terms, but kind of not, right? Like you chose to get that surgery knowing it, but you didn't choose to get hit from behind.
No, and I got that surgery with like the full expectation I was coming back to play.
Yeah.
Right. Uh, so yeah, that was the hardest part. Like aside from, like chronic pain and stiffness again, that weighs on you after a while. So I was dealing with that. But yeah, that loss of identity was very real. Like again, I was a hockey player for 30 years. And then it was kind of like, well, now what am I? Who am I? What the fuck am I gonna do with the rest of my life? I gotta, I didn't make the kind of money most of the guys make. So I'm like, I gotta work at some point here. Uh, so I have an Ivy League degree and I struggled. Like, imagine the guys that have no education. Like, some of the guys they really struggle, right?
Mhm.
Um, because I had that to fall back on if I chose to pursue that. Which it's funny. Like now, I use a lot of that, education. Where eventually I worked a job in wealth management because I was more interested in that at the time, and uh, it wasn't for me, but I was also not in a good place in life just with everything. So again, that loss of identity was real. But then I was going through a divorce at the same time, and my dad got diagnosed with ALS, and like just again the walls came crumbling down, and I ended up hitting rock bottom. You know, uh, I remember that moment came after like I was out the night before drinking way too much, and I had my son over the next day, and I was just hungover, right? And just being a piece of shit. And I remember like he's like asked me to go play this game we used to go play outside with like like something like that. And I was like, I'm not feeling good, buddy. Like, let's just watch it. It just hit me like a pile of bricks. And it was like, you always said you would never be that guy. And like, and it again, like this was kind of my other, I guess, epiphany or fork in the road where that's when I just said, okay, no more. And I like turned the TV off and I was like, let's go, buddy. Come on. And from that day on, I changed, and I went and talked to someone. So that helped me a lot. I knew I needed to go like
Mhm.
unpack all this stuff and get help. Um, and sometimes we all need help, right? So
Well,
yeah, for
that's
me, that was such a big thing when I had that. I was like, I can't continue like this. Um, and then my life started changing again. And also when I went back to this visualization practice, but I kind of abandoned that when I retired because I don't know, like it was like that's just an athlete thing. I don't need that.
Mhm.
Right. But then, after talking with the counselor and realizing like it gets to be whatever you want. So like you're not a hockey player anymore, but what do you want in your life? And like, and I thought like, okay, time to write that movie now. And I'm here now after 8 years, right? But it was a long journey to get here even after hockey. So yeah, everything, and that's why like I'm so passionate about like talking about the program and the visualization that I teach, because not only has it gotten me like out of the burn unit to Brown and the NHL, but most importantly, it saved my life in a dark time after hockey.
Mhm.
because again, my life dramatically changed as soon as I went back to that. So I've never made that mistake again since, with just abandoning this practice, because it's given me so much, and adversity has given me so much, right?
Yeah.
Which we talked about at the beginning. And it won't seem like it in the moment, right? But I can look back and I'm thankful. I almost like I give thanks to all those hard times,
Mhm.
which sets me up, better in the future when they come again, because they will,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I know,
Yeah,
adversity can be one of your greatest teachers, depending on how you look
totally.
at it, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
like you say, it comes down to choices, and you can choose to look at it as a negative, or you can choose to look at it as a positive. And now, I
Yeah.
don't tell people to always be positive, because then you're gonna somehow ignore how you're feeling, right? But
No, yeah, it's
it's
okay to
yeah,
sit with that shit for some time.
you gotta
Yeah,
sit with the
you
shitstorm
have to. Yeah,
sometimes.
you do.
So, what do you do with your mental health when you find yourself struggling? Do you have a mental health routine? Is visualizations obviously a huge part of that?
Yeah, yeah, huge part. So again, I just what do I want my movie to look like? And sometimes it's constantly updating, right? Um, just being thankful, like gratitude's a big thing in that practice,
Mhm.
right? So getting outside, I like to do that outside, and I just like go for a walk, close my eyes, and just go through this practice. Um, and exercise is a big one. And you said that at the beginning, right? Just
Yeah.
not even so much from a physical standpoint, but I've learned that I like physical adversity, so a workout is that,
Yeah.
right? So not just the physical benefits you get, but just mental clarity, and yeah, you just feel good about yourself, right?
Yeah, you release those happy chemicals, reward chemicals in
Totally.
your body.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think all those things combined, nutrition's a big one. Like I eat super clean, and I have for a long time. So it's funny, like if we go visit family, everyone thinks they eat healthy, but I mean, for like compared to, I guess, like in our household, like I can notice a big difference for 3 or 4 days coming back. I'm like, I feel like shit right now.
Oh, okay, so you
And
give yourself a little leeway when you go see
oh
mama
yeah,
bear?
yeah, totally. Yeah, and again, like I like to have a couple beers sometimes, and hang out with friends. So yeah, I give grace there for sure. And even with the nutrition, but it's like kind of the cumulative pie. Like I have this little slice for, you know, you go visit family, you want to go out for a dinner and crush a bunch of like food or whatever it is. That can live in there, I think, for me anyway.
Mhm.
Maybe not for everyone, but definitely for me. And then okay, go back to work right after that.
There you
Right?
go.
Yeah.
Alright, well, what's next for you? What do you got next? What's in your plans? You got a book number 2? Are you
Yeah,
just
good question,
speaking a
man.
lot, or
Yeah. Yeah, right now I'm speaking a lot, which has been awesome. So I think really in the near future, like I'm gonna move more to like more of the speaking, more of the consulting type of role. Um, I mean, I love working with all my clients, my one-on-one clients, and that's been really rewarding. I think, yeah, long term that's gonna shift where like I'll have just that live as an online program, which it does now. Um, but kind of transition all of that to that format. And and yeah, man, just really focusing on the speaking because I enjoy it. Um, I have a list of other things I want to do. Like I'm a big music guy. I'd really like to write an album one day, just just to do it, to say I did it. Uh, I want to write a kids book.
that's cool.
Uh, yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what's going on. Yeah, just moving more to the consulting role and doing a lot more speaking and really refining that. So
Cool.
yeah, another book. I really like the the experience and going through that and where it's at now. So yeah, potentially. It's funny, like it's almost like the ending that never was in the book, with because my wife and I now have a newborn,
Yeah.
which, as you know, has been a journey. A lot of losses, a cancer diagnosis, like a fucking shitstorm, right? So yeah, it's just and you and I have that in common with just a lot of like adversity with the family stuff, I guess, in that sense, right? So it's yeah, in a perfect world, I would have waited because it is kind of the ending that never was. But yeah, we have a newborn, which is maybe there'll be a part two. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. You never
Yeah,
know what life's gonna bring your way, hey?
yeah, you never know. Maybe fighter number two. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
Uh, so where can people find you and plug your book a little bit?
yeah. Basically, it's all everything's my name. So my website's just aaronvolpatti.com. My social is at Aaron Volpatti. The book is on Amazon is the easiest. I haven't I've kind of lost track on like which bookstores it's in and which it's not anymore. Like it was in all the chapters and Indigo and all that. Uh, again, like I haven't kept a pulse on that because you're kind of like you stay out of it at that point. The distributors do it all, right? So um, yeah, I would go check out your local bookstore if they don't have it. It's on Amazon if and Audible if you want to read on Audible.
And yeah,
Yeah.
people, I actually got the book and I listened to it, and it was he really is a fighter. There's a lot of things in the book that he doesn't cover in our podcast today that really goes to show you the adversity he went through, the personal adversity, and some of the things that not only he went through, but will resonate with you. It resonated with me and actually gave me an opportunity to kind of reach out and not close a chapter, but talk about something that I went through with another person that, one of the biggest things that helped me in life when I was on my recovery was listening to guys like me who struggled and learning what they did. But I messaged Aaron and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "What's your phone number? I'm going to give you a call." And he actually called me and then we chatted for probably about 45 minutes, and it really
Yeah.
helped me heal in a little part of it. So it gave me a little more understanding that this it happens to people, man. Life happens. You can't
Mhm.
control it. Focus on what you can control. And Aaron really showed that he controlled his outcome of his life, how fast he came back from the burn, making Brown when he said he was going to, and playing in the show, and ultimately landing those double homicides and making a name for himself.
Yeah, man. No, thanks. It's been a journey for sure, and we got to do that book exchange because I'd
Yeah,
love.
absolutely. I'll be in
Yeah, we'll
Vernon
make that happen.
I'll be in Vernon today, actually. I'm doing Dancing with the Shoe Shop Stars, the
Oh,
the
are you? Nice.
fundraiser for hospice.
I'm
We
I'm
gotta
stuck in I'm stuck in Lake Country today. We're at our house, but we're moving back to Vernon next month. So we'll find a time. But yeah, I'm stuck here. We got a Halloween party tomorrow, and we're going as Vikings. So my we love like I love Halloween, and my
Yeah.
wife is like big Halloween. So we're getting the full
Oh,
like this person's coming over to do like the braids and shit in our hair.
okay.
So
That's
she's like,
awesome,
can,
man.
can you shave your head? Like the side shave?
Are you
And
gonna
I'm
go?
like,
Are you gonna do it?
maybe. I mean, I'm trying to think my next gig's in like 2.5 weeks. So I'm like, and I'll have a mustache for November. And I'm like, well, it's probably
Hey,
gonna work. Maybe I'll keep the hair too.
it's all about the words, man. The words will get
Yeah,
them.
exactly. So I'll keep you posted. I might, maybe I'll just keep that look for a while. Who knows?
Yeah, and then ride your motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
All right, thanks for coming on the show, Aaron. And thank you to everyone who stopped by to listen to my incredible guest today, Mr. Aaron Volpatti, share his incredible story. Please be sure to check him out, give him a follow, and let him know how he's impacted you. And I'm pretty sure if you send him a DM, he'll get back to you at some point. I'll put all his contact information in the show notes, a link to his book. And if you like this podcast episode, please be sure to like, comment, or share it on your platform to help us spread this message. This was the Stronger You Project with Aaron Volpatti. Thank you very much.